It was a beautiful fall day, although being in the middle of nowhere in Ohio is not my ideal setting for a mission. It could have been worse. I opened the windows, turned on some music, and enjoyed the fresh country air, a nice contrast to the confines of the city I am. Music, seeing the brown stalks of corn along the miles of countryside, was welcome, as was the fresh, clean smell of the air. It is fortunate that these jobs do not involve much interaction with people. Although, unfortunately, some interaction is inevitable on the road. A local cop gave me a ticket for speeding. Even though I was going fast, I got the feeling that he did not like seeing a Fed in his area. I have learned that the local police are suspicious of us. They think we are plotting something behind their backs, and I guess they are not so wrong. I kept driving down the gravel road until the GPS told me that I had arrived. As I got closer, I turned down the radio and looked at the empty fields and the forest around. I turned into the long dirt road that led to the civilian's house and garage. I parked, with the trunk facing the porch, breathed in the fresh country air, and looked around the land. I had to work. I was surprised by the amount of space I had at my disposal, and with no neighbors nearby, I couldn't have asked for a better environment. After stretching and letting out a sigh, I decided to start working. I took the keychain out of my pocket and opened the front door. The place looked pretty good. Much better than some houses I had faced in my previous missions. I went to the trunk of the official vehicle. I opened it and took out the first duffel bags full of equipment, taking them to the kitchen, which seemed to me a good place to settle after several trips with the heavy bags and boxes. I opened the garage. Luckily, in this case, the civilians had left in time, leaving me space in the garage to park. I closed the trunk and put the vehicle in the garage, closing it. As I left, I went back to the house and changed my clothes. Wearing the suit all day bothers me, but the bosses want us to appear nice and formal in front of the public. If only people knew what kind of monsters we really are. Music. I checked the laser sights on both, and everything was in order. My favorite, the 338 dot, with a holographic sight. I also set it up. It's nice to have a budget, practically unlimited advantage of working for the United States government. My last weapon was a personal .357 Magnum revolver that I wore on my chest. It never hurts to have an extra one, just in case I also carried my hunting knife, that I sharpened that morning. The next few hours I spent in the nearby woods, setting up motion sensor cameras. They were there to warn me if something got too close. I didn't take many precautions of setting them up, as things don't get interesting until night falls. When I finished, I went back to the house, the laptop, and let's make sure, I guess it's worth explaining why I'm here. Setting up all this equipment and with an arsenal of weapons while I am alone on a farm. Rewind to March 1st. 2017, 3:33 a.m. in Iowa. Dispatch received a call from a local farmer claiming he saw a motionless figure at the edge of a grove of trees on his property. The farmer was described as a man of average height, wearing a dark shirt and pants and a wide-brimmed hat. He said he woke up abruptly one night before, without knowing why, and saw the figure standing next to a row of trees, looking towards his house. Without moving, the farmer took his rifle and went out into the garden, threatening the intruder to leave when he saw that he did not react. He returned to the house to call 911 while continuing to watch from his porch. During the call, the farmer sounded increasingly nervous and scared. Dispatch told him to stay where he was. They assured the farmer that the police were on the way. A few quiet minutes passed, without incident, until suddenly the farmer let out a scream of terror over the phone, and seconds later the call was cut off. The police began a trip of more than 40 minutes to the residence. Halfway there, they received several calls from the farmer's neighbors, reporting that they saw a large column of smoke coming from the house. And the closest ones said that the house was on fire when the police arrived. The house had been completely consumed by the fire. The firemen arrived shortly after, but curiously the fire had already completely extinguished the only thing that remained were the charred remains of what was once the house. The firemen were bewildered by the speed with which the fire had destroyed everything. There was no clear explanation. The police searched for the farmer and the alleged intruder through the fields and woods nearby. But the search ended when the firemen made a discovery. In the house they found the charred bones of a man in the rubble. But no, they expected. After further investigation, it was discovered that the man's limbs had been ripped from his body before he was incinerated at an impossible speed. 4.308 caliber bullet casings were also found where the porch used to be. The rifle was found intact near the house. Despite the intense fire, forensic experts confirmed that that rifle had fired the casings, but the bullets were never found. This was the first incident, but not the last. October 28th, 2017, 11:07 a.m. Montana Central received a call from a rancher who saw a woman dressed in an old-fashioned way and wearing a linen cap. The rancher said the woman was standing motionless among her cattle. She showed no signs of fear or concern for her safety, only because of the strange woman in her field. He also noted that the cattle stayed away from her. An ambulance arrived at 11:29 a.m., but paramedics found no trace of the woman. When they arrived at the entrance of the rancher's house, noticed the door was open. They knocked on the man, but he did not answer. They went in and found him hanging from a rope on the stairs. He had no history of mental problems, and no family members believed he had suicidal tendencies. In addition, the autopsy report revealed that both arms and all fingers were broken, as if they had been crushed with great force, making it impossible for him to have tied the rope to himself. November 29th, 2018, 2:06 a.m. Wisconsin Central received a call from another farmer. He also saw a woman in an old black and white dress and a linen cap. The woman was standing in the driveway, lit by a lamp, motionless in the cold wind and snow. Later, the farmer and his wife were found dead under a collapsed wall in their house. The stones had been placed in an orderly manner until they exerted enough pressure to crush their bones. This was the first incident of which we have photographic evidence. The night of the incident, a surveillance camera located a few acres from the house captured the image of the woman exactly as described by the farmer, in a black and white dress and linen cap, motionless like an old mannequin in front of the camera. I could go on. But the important thing is that these incidents are becoming more frequent. We know what they are, or at least what they represent. We believe that all these people lived in North America. During the witch trials, we didn't think they were the ones executed, but those who accused others and carried out the executions. Now they have returned to kill again. Luckily, my department detected this pattern over time and assigned a team to deal with them. We are a small group, Some detect possible incidents, others investigate, some cover up, and then there are those like me who are in charge of eradicating the problem. I am here to hunt them down and return them to their graves. Sometimes I get there before they take a victim, sometimes afterwards, but their reign of terror always ends with me. I have never failed, and I did not expect this night to be different. A beep sounded on the screen from my laptop, indicating that one of the cameras had detected motion. It had been quiet since I installed them. Not a single sign of life. No deer or squirrels. Nothing. I looked at the camera that had been activated, but I saw nothing. Another sensor activated, but it also did not show anything. I checked all the cameras looking for some sign. Suddenly another camera caught something. A figure that looked like a dog quickly crossed the frame, but I knew it was not a dog. I turned my attention to the field where the movement came from. I positioned myself behind my rifle and looked through the scope towards the line of trees. My heart was pounding. I felt the adrenaline as I searched for movement at the edge of the field. All I saw was the flash of the setting sun between the trees and the shadows of the cornstalks. In an empty field, everything was silent. Not even the wind was blowing. I took the safety off the rifle and aimed at the figure's chest. I prepared to shoot. But before I did, I noticed a movement. His mouth. It began to open, strangely stretching beyond normal, until the jaw dropped below its chest. Despite this, it continued to look at me without moving. I was about to shoot, when a terrifying scream echoed through the music fields. A sound like that of desperate souls. The birds flew out of the trees, and the noise shook me. But I remained calm. The figure closed its mouth and began to run towards me, moving with speed and strength, like a predator. Its mouth was full of rotten teeth, and the speed with which it advanced made any other animal seem slow in comparison. Despite the situation, I remained calm. I began to calm my breathing, controlling each inhalation and each exhalation. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The shot rang out in the air, and I saw blood coming out of its back. But the creature did not. He changed direction, running across the field to flank me. He couldn't allow it. Slowly he moved on the bipod. His limbs pounded the ground with speed and power as he propelled himself across the field. I will never get used to seeing him run continue. I continued moving the sights, fast enough to start gaining ground on him, fast enough to let the crosshair catch up to him. Inhale, exhale. The crosshair began to reach him, slowly. Inhale, exhale. This time, he fell to the ground, but quickly got up and continued running into the woods. I loaded a new bullet and fired again. Although I hit him, it wasn't enough to stop him. After a brief fall, he got up and started running again, this time back towards the woods he had come from. Inhale, exhale. The third shot grazed his back. Frustrated, I loaded another bullet and took aim, but it was too late. Before I could start preparing my fourth shot, he had made one last leap from the field towards the grove from which I had emerged. I let out a sigh and lowered my head. Disappointed, I knew what I had to do next, but I did not want to do it. The last flashes of the sun came through the open window and illuminated my rifle while I reloaded the magazine. I sat down and lost my gaze on the screen in front of me. I hoped that some camera would capture some movement that would give me a clue of where I had escaped. Knowing my fate, I should not have expected it to happen. Accepting reality, I stood up, took my rifle, hung it around my neck, and left it hanging in front of me. I aimed down, looked through the scope, and checked the laser before checking the chamber. All ready, I adjusted the night vision scope on my head, took my revolver, and headed for the door. As I left, I let out another sigh, this time from stress, hunting these things at night on their own ground. It is never as easy as finishing them off quickly from a distance. But I had no other option. I had to end this. I lowered my glasses and turned them on, illuminating the dark field in shades of green and white. I began the long walk that took longer than I expected. The speed of that monstrosity made me underestimate the size of the field. Each step was slow and silent. I didn't want the crunch under my feet to distract me. I had to listen to any sound it made. I hadn't even made it halfway to the tree line. When I got to the first pool of blood, I had shot it there for the second time. Before it retreated, there were pieces of flesh scattered about. But I didn't stop to watch. I focused on the blood that was leading me back to the forest. Any experienced hunter has followed the trail of a deer. It was frustrating because you never know how far it has gone. But I knew that thing was still alive, and I was also furious. I continued on my way, dividing my attention between the blood on the ground and the trees in front of me, looking for movement and listening. If I was lucky, I would try to scare the deer until I reached the edge of the forest. I stopped calming my nerves. I didn't want to go into those damn trees, but there was no way around it. I had a job to do. I extended the bipod of my rifle and lowered it to the ground. I raised my other rifle to my shoulder. I took a deep breath and advanced even slower. And cautiously, my heavy breathing was going between the twigs that crunched under my boots. Just entering the forest, I saw the next stain of blood. It was on a branch whose leaves dripped crimson liquid. I approached to observe it, and noticed more blood on the branches above it. Followed a pattern, each branch stained with blood. Suddenly something moved in the crown of a tree. I raised the rifle. I pointed upwards and saw two eyes shining like lights. In my scope, Night, the creature, opened its mouth to let out a deafening scream, but I pulled the trigger. The shot resounded, and the bullets hit its flesh. I only managed to shoot it a couple of times before I chased it through the woods, as it leapt impossible distances, shaking the trees so hard I thought some would break. I tried unsuccessfully to get a clean shot. I almost gave up the chase. When I saw an opportunity clearing up ahead, the creature tried to turn sharply to the right and kept jumping through the trees. I rushed into the clearing, and kneeling down on the ground, I tried to shoot again, but I only heard the click of the firing pin. The chamber was empty. I cursed as I quickly changed the magazine, but when I looked up, the body had already disappeared. I stood up, frustrated. I had put dozens of these things on the ground before, but this one was costing me more than usual. As I approached a bend in the trail, I slowed my pace and brought the rifle to my shoulder. Suddenly my head spun violently, and my vision went black. It took me a few seconds to realize I was dead. Not unconscious, something had hit my glasses, night vision ripping off a rock. The size of a ball whizzed past my ear. I turned around and saw the creature between the trees. I let anger take over me and began to shoot. Blood was pouring from its back as it advanced towards me. My magazine emptied instead of reloading. I drew my Glock and continued shooting at lightning speed. The creature caught up with me. It put one hand around my neck and lifted me off the ground. I continued shooting at point-blank range while I heard its sadistic laughter. My magazine emptied, and with no other option I began to hit it in the face with the empty pistol that only enraged it more. It threw me into the air, hitting me against branches and the ground. I quickly reloaded my rifle and began to shoot it again. In a struggle, I managed to shoot it in the fingers. Volos growled in anger, but did not back away. I tried to flee, but it caught me by the neck and lifted me up again, taking me to a tree. My back creaked as it hit me against the bark. He looked at me and smiled again. We killed our sinners. We brought justice to our land. We brought justice for God. I ignored his rude words. I raised an arm and punched him firmly in the face. F.O. all our sinners, and will die for their sins again. Force and hit his face with everything I could muster, but he still did nothing. Now go burn in the lake of fire. He screamed and laughed, with a dozen sadistic voices coming out of his mouth. He opened his mouth and his jaw stretched to an impossible level. He lowered me until I was at his height. He moved his open mouth towards my head, shaking with rage. His teeth were inches from my face. His breath was foul. I unsheathed my left arm and slashed him in the chest before stabbing him. I punched him with my right arm that made him stagger. He prepared his own punch, and he threw it. I narrowly escaped, stepping out of the way before his fist collided with the tree, and went through it, splitting it in half and causing the wood to fall to the ground. I took the opportunity to draw my revolver. He recovered from his punch and faced me, pulling the knife out of his neck and letting the blood gush out. He stared at me as he slowly approached, ready to deliver his final blow. His head shook harder than ever from anger. His mouth hung open, showing his rows of rotten human teeth. I raised the revolver and tried to fix the sight, but it was shaking too much. I quickly recovered. He inhaled, exhaled the front sight, leveled with the rear. The recoil caused the gun to rise enough to see the damage. I hit him in the mouth, at the corner of the jaw, which now hung open with one side completely detached. He screamed in pain as he gargled blood, and I collapsed on the ground. I aimed again, hammering the gun with the second shot. I completely ripped off his jaw. "Let's see how you bite me, now you bastard." You whisper his skull. I squeezed and then silence. After dragging the body to the field, I spent the next few hours recovering my lost and damaged equipment, as well as searching for each of my cameras. Then I retrieved my vehicle and drove it to the edge of the field. There was only one thing left to do. I opened the trunk and took out the metal box. I don't understand why they make these things so damn heavy. I opened it. I placed the corpse inside. And let's make sure. Music. I finished digging the hole. I placed the metal coffin inside and covered it from there. I gathered my equipment. I packed it up and left. There's supposed to be a cleanup crew that comes when we finish these missions and destroys any strange evidence. I suspect they also take the body. Where they take it, and what they do with it, I don't know, no idea, but I have been strictly reminded not to ask questions about it and to just do my job. Still, I always wonder what I have the most doubts about is why do these things exist? What the hell is going on? Why now this has been going on for longer than I know. Are they lying to me? What will happen in the future? If this continues, the situation has only gotten worse. They appear more and more often. I have more questions than answers, but what I can tell you is that this problem is not going to go away soon. It is only going to get worse. There is only going to be more, no less. The death toll will keep increasing. People are going to find out sooner or later. It could be Now maybe we will stop them. All this will come to an end someday. Or maybe we will be the ones to find our end. In any case, I will be there to see it.